and we just had a really great two-part series on the show about the Nazis really like didn't go away after World War II. Germany lost World War II. The Nazis kind of fled to all over the world, working with all sorts of people, including Zionists, NATO. If you study the NATO flag or symbol, it is a straight up Nazi swastika right in the middle of it. If you take a look at it,
I have never I've never seen the flag of NATO, to be quite honest with you. I
if
gotta
you have a
look
computer in
that.
front of you, Google it
Yeah.
right now. Go NATO symbol flag, and you'll right in the middle of it is a giant swastika. Right
Let's
there.
see. Okay, so NATO flag, it looks like the star thing.
Yeah, the star in the middle. If you look at the top
Uh
white, goes down top white line goes through the blue, up goes
yeah.
there, right in the middle of it, dude. Because they're the ones. It was formed by the Nazis to
Okay, okay.
stop.
There it is.
There it is, dude. To stop what they said was Russian aggression. What are your thoughts on the Ukraine? It seems to be really sad. You got Klitschko calling out Rogan about democracy in the Ukraine, and you're like, but your leader just canceled elections. Like you sound like the Democrats that are worried about democracy while not having any kind of primary. What are
Yeah,
your
I mean,
thoughts?
I'm not a Ukraine expert by any stretch. I'm not an expert in anything, really, to be honest with you. I
Respect
just
on that.
I just look stuff up, and I'm just as I'm educating myself, I'm just like reading one chapter ahead of everybody else. That's really who I am. I don't want people to take me, extremely seriously in that way, but I'm just trying to look for information, disseminate information, and then just kind of learning as we go. I think that's what everybody's trying to do. In terms of the Ukraine, what I've learned about, the whole situation there is, I mean, there was a whole like 10, 15-year process to sort of provoke Russia into attacking Ukraine, right? There was a whole thing. The thing I listened to was Jeffrey Sachs. I don't know if you've heard his take on. I mean, he was there. I mean, he was literally I don't know what you call him, a diplomat, economist, diplomat working with Russia, and he was talking about how when Vladimir Putin came to power, he was very, very eager to work with the United States, and he was like, trying to get us to be cordial. Like, hey, if you talk about globalism, this is going to be a great thing. Now we're all in agreement. Like the USSR is over, and now we can have this sort of cooperation that we weren't able to have before. And Jeffrey Sachs, he was like, all right, let me go back, and I think this is going to be a done deal. And apparently, he went back. U.S. State Department was saying, no, 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 Russia, the enemy. We were gonna do what we do, and then they started this whole process of like moving the chess pieces around and sort of underhandedly doing like a coup in Ukraine 2014, right? You guys know about that situation and installing like a leader that was anti, pro US, Zelensky, right? And that's how he came to power. Nobody knows about that. Everybody just hears that it's an unprovoked attack. Yeah, that's what when you hear things in the media that's like repeated over and over, like that unprovoked attack, or what's the other one related to Israel? The only democracy in the Middle East. Like these kinds of like catchphrases
Yeah,
or a
bumper
human
stickers.
shield. Yeah, then like, okay, this is like a mass media propaganda campaign, and there's probably like way more beneath that should be looked into. And then yeah, and in terms of the Ukrainian people, they're almost like just pawns in the whole thing, right? I mean, nobody's blaming them. They're just getting dragged out of their houses to go to war. I'm sure nobody really wants that to be going on. And I'm sure they just want to secure peace for their country as well. And I think other countries, that's why like Taiwan, if you bring that in the equation, right? That's kind of the next battlefield. I literally heard people like weapons manufacturers or like this guy who sells weapons talk about like with excitement of like, oh yeah, it's Taiwan is the next thing. I'm going out there for a conference. I'm selling them all these like drone things. I'm like, what is happening here? And so the whole thing is like we talked about, it's not like, hey, we want to go out and kill people. It's just like, oh well, we're making a lot of money doing these weapon sales. Let's just keep that going somehow. And then look at the rebuild of Ukraine, and you bring in BlackRock into the whole equation of like, oh, not only can we make money
Yeah,
destroying the place,
so
now we're going to make
crazy.
money rebuilding it, and it's all like at the top, right? None of that money is trickling down to the people. It's all about how do we finance it in a way where we're going to make a shitload of money. And that's where I think people don't understand when I'm in opposition to funding Ukraine. It's not I'm in opposition to to, democracy, or I love Putin, these kinds of things, or that I'm a sympathizer of the Russian, the government. It's just that we weren't even there for the right reasons. Like we need to just like reset this whole thing. Like, we don't want to, just because you're down this road, right? It's a, what is that fallacy called? The sunk cost fallacy. Just because we've already done this doesn't mean we have to keep going and continue to do this. Like we could just stop right now.
There is a giant kind of reimagining, rebranding, I guess, of the United States versus Russia. I think it's only in the United States. I think outside the United States, a lot of people see the U.S. military apparatus or industrial complex as probably the greatest terrorist organization on the planet. I would definitely believe that. I mean, I think that's why nobody's joining the military right now, is because they see it as more of us being stormtroopers than freedom fighters. But why and why do you think we hate Russia so much? What has Russia done when, again, we get into World War II, the Holocaust, all that stuff. The Russians lost more than anybody. They lost 20 million people fighting the war. They were in concentration camps as well. What do you think the whole theory? What are your thoughts on that is?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but if I were to come up with a theory, it's just I think it ties, at least to me. I always try to think of like following the money and where the finances go. Is that we've had this kind of buildup of the military industrial complex through the Cold War for so long. All of a sudden, you've taken out the enemy that we're all supposed to hate, and that means that, oh, do we draw down the military now? Is that something that we should do? It's, of course not. No, that's not what we want to do. It's like, no, we need to continue to prove that they are a threat to U.S. security, and I think that's what they continue to do. And now I think maybe could be the saving grace. I don't know if China could come in and take that place. I've read analysis saying, hey, if this Russia thing comes to an end and we're able to wrap this up somehow, we need another thing. Maybe we bring China into the equation. Now we have another reason to continue to increase the Pentagon budget, which once again, can't pass an audit. I think they need to pass an audit at some point.
It's so crazy to me. Like, imagine that person has to walk in there and say, "Hey, we're gonna audit you." Is that is that cool, man? I mean, I don't want to.
Is this war against Ukraine showing how weak Russia is? Because they're obviously not kind of dominating. I mean, the Ukraine.
I think they could dominate them if they wanted to. I think they're trying to restrain from. Johnny, you don't believe that?
No. Why do they have North Korean soldiers on the front lines in Ukraine right now? If they could. No, I think they don't. I think modern military, the problem of all modern militaries is that it is next to impossible in contemporary times to institute a draft. So enrollment is always going to be, it's a problem in the United States right now. They're having enrollment's down dramatically. And I think, I don't think they have the numbers or the technology right now. And to go back to your question about why we hate Russia, the U.S. and the United States Russia and the United States used to be somewhat close before the revolution, before the communist revolution. And then that just changed everything. I mean, the Russians supported the Union during the Civil War. They remember like Seward's Folly, Alaska from Russia. They had a connection before the revolution, and then after the revolution, things changed dramatically.
But who's behind the Russian Revolution? I mean, we study that. It's foreigners out. And then, again, the guy who wrote Hitler, Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, he also wrote Wall Street and the Rise of the Bolshevik Revolution and how they funded the whole Bolshevik Revolution. And to do what? To what aim? What does that mean? And that's where we start going. How deep does this rabbit hole go? Is it go just beyond geopolitics, or is it just old clan wars from like thousands of years ago, and that these people don't forget? I mean, the Greater Israel Project seems to look a lot like Mesopotamia to me. So it's interesting. I know this isn't necessarily your expertise, James, but I don't know how long have you been on this journey?
I would say I've had maybe like two. I would classify two political awakenings. Probably the first one would be Bernie Sanders was when I figured out,
That's
growing
what
up,
caused
I
this
was,
show.
yeah.
That's what birthed
Oh,
this
really?
show was Bernie
Okay.
Sanders getting
Bernie
elected.
Sanders. Because before that, growing up, I was always taught very simple messaging of like Republican bad, Democrat good. I was,
I
okay,
agree.
I'm a Democrat. And 2016 was the first time I saw, oh man, this party is fucked. They will like destroy their own basically in order to maintain power or to continue doing what they're trying to do. And they will stop the democratic process if they need to maintain democracy. And so that was like my first thing. I'm like, okay, this isn't what I thought it was at all. And the second awakening probably, or definitely came during COVID, because I had just way more time. I was a consultant. So I think 2019, I was in no time. I'd spent 200 days on the road, traveling to client sites and doing that kind of shit work. And the thing is, that's in these things, it's how they like get you is because, the work itself was shit, but I didn't realize that it was shit because I was like, they're, traveling around in first class and staying at the nice hotels and this and that. And so there's a little bit of that, oh yeah, I'm kind of a cool and important person, coming in and cutting costs and doing, whatever it was we were doing. Actually, there's an interesting, consultant story that I want to share with you guys. As I wrap up the story, but I think you'll find it interesting. But anyways, in terms of that's kind of where that's the journey that I'm on. So it was during COVID, I was like, oh man, none of this stuff is what they told us it was. And that's when I started digging into more and more stuff. And if I look back at the stuff that I was producing, 3 or 4 years ago, I'm like, oh man, this is so surface level. Like, I don't know what the hell I was saying, but it's part of a thing that we got to do because you
That's
can't
the journey, dude.
you can't go deep. You have to start,
You got to crawl before you can walk, and you got to walk
exactly.
before you can run.
And that's what happens when I look at my stuff even 2 weeks ago. I'm like, oh, that was, that could have been better. I think there's more I could have added to that to make that piece better. But it's, yeah, like you said, it's a journey that we're going on. And I was listening to your Rogan thing. Apparently Rogan doesn't like that word journey. I saw that.
Yeah, I go, what do you want me to say? Skipping? Do you want me to
yeah.
skip?
Yeah, you're like, okay, I'm taking a stroll outside my house. I thought that was hilarious.
What do you want from me, dude? But it's interesting, I had a big, I always talk about on the show, the two earliest conspiracies to me were Santa Claus and then Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik getting busted in a car together, which shattered my world of that pro wrestling wasn't real. So like I always like, oh, some shit's going on, dude. They're not afraid to lie to us. So my dad raised me not to believe anything I hear and half what I see. And now I don't believe anything what I see because of AI and all that stuff, which is fine. People think that's a horrible place to be. It's just like, I don't know. Let me see more data. But I remember there was a couple times politically where I would be like, okay, something's up here. The first time was when Bill Clinton had to go to the unveiling of Trent Lott's portrait in the Library of Congress, and there was Bill Clinton, Trent Lott, Newt Gingrich, and Orrin Hatch, and they were all smiling and laughing together. And I was like, oh, you guys aren't supposed to like each other. That's a bit. I go, dude, Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik right there. And I go, oh, dude, it's a uniparty.